Hello and welcome to the BI interview. I'm Gavin Souter. I'm the editor of Business Insurance. I'm here today with Alex Wells, who is head of US Middle Market at Zurich North America, and he's based in Philadelphia. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Gavin. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about changes in underwriting in the middle market. So maybe we can just start off talking about new technology. How are you seeing new technology changing middle market underwriting?
Well, I think we've had new technology for my entire career over the last 30 years, right? But when I started, I remember the first fax machine that we used to send quotes out on, and then the internet came, that changed. But we're definitely living in a world right now that's changing at a very fast pace. And technology in underwriting is also impacting everything that we're doing, but it essentially is making most underwriters faster at what they do. Historically, underwriting has been an activity that requires a lot of data and collection of that data at the beginning of a process. And AI in particular has made that much more efficient. It also allows us to bring a lot more of that data in from different sources and place it into our systems in a much more efficient way. So underwriters really are spending much more time, I think, on the important part of underwriting, which is analyzing that data and making good decisions and creating solutions for our clients.
What sort of data are they now having access to, which maybe they didn't have such easy access to previously?
Sure. So I'll use an example of looking at a roof of a building, right? So historically, we've sent out a risk engineer and we'll go up on top of that building and say, do they have a good roof or do they not have a good roof? We have to wait for that to come back and they create a scoring system against that. Now we have data where we have satellites that fly all over the United States and they can give us real-time pictures of every roof of every building that we want to insure. And there's AI models that can look at that roof. The underwriter doesn't actually have to look at the roof and tell the underwriter, hey, you might want to look at this roof individually. It looks like there might be a problem there. So it speeds up the whole process. I mean, that can take weeks and it narrows it down to hours, if not minutes, for the underwriter to get the same amount of information that they would have had previously.
And is that showing up in the numbers? Are you seeing like loss ratios improving or expenses improving as a result of that?
Well, I think that we're still at the beginning of this process. And so there's a lot of investment being made in those types of activities. And I think every insurance company is learning which ones are going to make a return for us in the long run. I think we all like to have more information, but we're always trying to figure out what of that information is relevant, what helps us make the best decision. We make assumptions coming into that type of work, and then we validate that over time. I think that it certainly appears out of the gate to be pretty transformational for us. And the loss ratio, maybe, but certainly speed and efficiency and allowing underwriters to do more productive things than they were doing in the past.
So what about the underwriters? What do underwriters that are coming into the business, what sort of skills do they need to develop?
Yeah. It's funny you asked that. Actually, last week I met with our new trainee class, and we have about 60 underwriters that I met with and had an hour with them and talked about that very topic. I said, okay, you're creating a career for yourself. What kinds of things are you going to need to do? And how are they different than what I had to do 30 years ago when I started in the industry? And what I realized when I was preparing for that discussion is that the basic things are very much the same. An underwriter needs to develop relationships in the marketplace and understand the needs of our clients and our brokers. And then they need to take the information that they get about those clients and brokers and develop solutions against those. Now, the way you do that now is going to be different than it was 30 years ago. As I said, I remember looking in the yellow pages and looking up clients and making phone calls to understand what they do and how they do it. And so you're going to need a different set of technological skill sets in order to be able to do this properly, I think, in the future. It's interesting learning about how you prompt AI for information, right? That's an entirely new skill set that everyone has to learn. I think, across all walks of life, but in particular as an underwriter. How do you ask the questions to get the right information back from an AI model? How do you use predictive models and other ways to give you better information? And so when we talked this through, I said, don't forget about the relationship side. Don't forget about the reality that being an underwriter is really predicated upon making good decisions. You're just going to get better information, but it can also be more information, and you have to be able to figure out what of that information is relevant at that point in time to create a solution that frankly is sellable in the marketplace, that you can take back to a client and say, I understand your business better than I used to. And that means that I've got a better insurance product for you to buy, or a different risk engineering service that might be more applicable to you.
So they need to be able to use the technology, but they don't necessarily kind of need to go out and get like a computer sciences degree or something like that. It's very much in the same way like when the internet first came in, people who weren't familiar with technology suddenly had to learn how to use it, but they didn't have to really get into the nuts and bolts behind it.
That's right. And in fact, we have this conversation a lot about data and analytics, right? You don't need to be a data engineer to be able to ask the right questions of that data and say, what are the trends? What are the things that we're seeing in the data, right? You need smart people helping you develop that data set, but you yourself don't need to be an absolute expert in doing that. In fact, the real expertise comes in taking that data and translating it into a solution for a client or for a broker.
Right, right. So with all this in mind, how do you think the middle market insurance purchasing process will be different in, say, 5 years?
Yeah, and I think we're already moving toward this, but I think you're going to move away from the amount of activity that we've had collecting that data, collecting information about clients, and you're going to move much more quickly to a discussion about what is unique about that client. Does the carrier understand the space that that client is operating in? And are you going to be able to craft those solutions that make the most sense? So I think you'll move very quickly through the beginning of the process, which right now takes a long time. And we spend a lot of our expense dollars around and quickly get to a much more consultative type of relationship. In fact, we're even moving to the place where the data that we collect on our clients gets automatically uploaded into various systems that we have and models that we have. And right now, we're still developing that technology, right? We have submission ingestion engines that will take emails, right? We still get a lot of our data through an email. And there will be an Adobe file, and there will be an Excel file, and there will be narrative written into the actual email. And we're trying to pull that information out of all of these different ways of delivering information. We're working with a number of our brokers on understanding their data that they already have in their systems that has already been entered into their systems, and how we ingest that more efficiently into our systems. And so we can really focus on the handful of areas that we don't know something that we need to know about the account. And that's really, we're moving very quickly on that. And many of our biggest brokers are already sharing data directly with us, and we share data back to them so that they understand what we're thinking about risk as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? With the increased ways of communicating, it can sometimes make things more complicated because you get things just coming at you from different directions in different formats. I don't think I get too many faxes anymore, but there's still plenty of emails and phone calls and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and how do you and text messages, right? We talk about this. How do you take the information in a text message and get it into an underwriting file and hold that? Because one of the things actually that I see AI helping us with a lot is taking us from the initial underwriting of an account, and then in subsequent years, understanding what might have changed about that risk and saying you just need to underwrite these changes. You don't need to underwrite the entire account again. And so having all of the information that you collected when you started at the very beginning, when you knew nothing about the account that you're working with, and making sure that's all housed in our systems and is being able to be used as we think about whether there's a change either in that account or in the economy around that account. And that makes us much better at deciding whether we need to touch that decision again, or whether we can simply automate it and roll it over, which our clients prefer, right? I mean, none of us want to deal with our insurance every year if we don't have to. So if it's efficient and thoughtful and we have the information we need, then we don't have to ask a lot of questions of our clients.
Great. Excellent. Well, thanks very much for joining us today, Alex, and thanks for sharing your insights. We covered a lot of ground there.
It was wonderful. Thanks, Kevin.